Hi everyone, my name is Rolf and I'm here to give you an update on the Tensor compiler and with particular regards to this newly formed design group and the efforts around the charter. So as most of you know, MLIR was originally developed with an eye towards ML compilers, even though the ML and MLIR doesn't stand for that. As a result of that, there's this kind of a toolkit that lives upstream that consists of a number of dialects. And they're relatively high up in this diagram here. So there's this grouping of dialects that many people together are working on together upstream, and they actually see value in doing this all together. But there's also some tensions about how we should develop this further, around which directions we want to go, which resulted in efforts around MLIR governance. There was this RFC that went out asking should the MLIR project have a charter? Should we think about restructuring? By a number of prominent people, including Renato, Stella, Chris, Alex, Jacques, Mehdi. Renato then took up the idea of using a survey to actually have some data to guide all of these efforts. And based on that, another RFC went out saying, okay, here's a proposal for how we can organize ourselves, how we can work towards charters. And one of the results of that is, let's say that we are going to group some of these dialects together into coherent usages based on the data from the survey. So the survey, one of the results of the survey is that these 6 dialects tend to be used together: Linux, Tensor, Memref, Vector, Bufferization, TOSA. And they have their own community of stakeholders. People will keep using these things together and are maybe less concerned about other bits. These people also tend to agree on that there's a need for an overarching charter, so a document that sets out how these dialects are supposed to be used together, what are the coherent flows that we are expected to work. These people also agree on that there is a need for clear governance, and also that this governance is kind of like what we had before. We just want upstream consensus about what to do, but we also want to be very clear on what that consensus is, meaning we want to document it. Okay, so there's this need to group these dialects together. But what do we then do with it? How do we achieve that? So Renato put out a proposal asking, should there be a Tensor compiler design group with the explicit goal of setting up a charter across these Tensor compiler dialects and the relevant interfaces, transforms, and surrounding infrastructure. The scope of the topics that should be addressed by this group are linear algebra, as one might expect in an ML compiler, but also which also then means covering the semantics of tensors, of memrefs, and vector. There are issues around canonicalization to think about. There's ingress, egress, the different flows that should be possible. Another goal is to make sure that the documentation is actually up to date. One of these the aspects of that is that these different stakeholders have different roadmaps in mind for all of these different topics. Can we just try to actually work together and consolidate this and try to be explicit and explicitly document what we believe is the future direction for these different topics, which goes along with updating any of the outdated rationale documents that currently live online, and then actually write down a charter saying what's the coherent usage of the whole system. And another sub-goal is that, okay, there are many different users, including in the monorepo. Can we make life for them easier? One of the ways is facilitate dialect extensions, be clearer on the requirements that the different transforms have, and start giving actual coverage to the different flows that we do want to support, so in terms of tests. As part of this call for a design group, there was the call for volunteers to stand up. So these 12 people stood up as in terms of being active contributors and feeling that they're representative stakeholders. So these are 12 people from a number of different companies. It just so happens to be that these 4 people also correspond to the MLIR area team, which is an thing that's supposed to, a grouping of people which is supposed to cover the interest of the whole of MLIR, and is a distinct governance effort. And on that, I just don't want to say too much, but I will just note that somebody like Chris is welcoming of these efforts around providing more organizational structure for MLIR and these efforts around setting up charters. So let's see how that all turns out. So what is it that this design group is actually doing? We have bi-weekly meetings, so every 2 weeks we meet with an agenda, and we make notes on what has been discussed. You can find these online. There's links on Discourse. I will put this slide set up on Discourse. So far, we've only had 3 meetings. It's still the early days, so that's why there's no well-formed charter yet. The idea is that we will do regular open design meetings, and the first one has now actually been scheduled for the 29th of April, I believe, on Tuesday. It's up on the forums now. So what happens at these meetings is that people bring topics that are in the pipeline for them and are relevant to the whole community, or at least to the members in this group. In essence, they are coming up with these pre-RFC topics with the idea that during these meetings, we can quickly iterate on them. So through rapid top-of-mind responses of people, we can just have much lower overhead than having these discussions than on the forum. But still, we want to have a normal, proper consensus process, which means that after we've had this quick iteration, let's just put these topics up on as an RFC on the forums and just have consensus formed through an actual discussion there, just meaning it's easier for at least some people to agree on how these RFCs should move forward. All the documentation that we generate is publicly available, and here's a link to feel free to have a look at it. So in these initial meetings, we have mostly been making progress on the vector dialect. There's, again, a document available to see what kind of topics we have in mind. A number of these topics have been put forward as RFCs and have been discussed in the group meetings. Let me just highlight now that this first one, for example, which is asking for pointers to be allowed as element types of vectors. And the outcome of it is that we now have a vector element type interface, which says that we don't want to allow everything. We don't want everything, all types to implement this, only the types which correspond to atomic types, ones that you cannot decompose further. So there's a recent change upstream, and there are some other RFCs that you can find on Discourse that we have, that a live discussion has helped with. Okay, other significant changes in the Tensor compiler recently are that Linux.matmul and Linux.elementwise now support FM maps so that you can have your broadcast and transposes folded into these ops. There's the new Linux.contract-op, which generalizes all contraction ops, and Tensor.pack and unpack have been moved into Linux to deal with some layering issues and to allow for packing on memrefs. So here's a listing of some topics that we're looking to make progress on. So here are some 5 topics related to vector, and given the amount of time, I will not go into them now. But if you see an interesting topic, do come up to me, do come up to anybody else in this design group. We're looking for ideas, we're looking to make progress on this. So here's another 5 topics. Do let me know if you see anything of interest, anything you have ideas on. Okay, as for what we're actually trying to do up next is we want to focus more on the documentation updates, whereas we've been doing a lot of these pre-RFCs. So there are many dialect-level documents and rationale documents that are outdated. If you find issues, please let us know. We would really like to address these soon, and any help with this would also be much appreciated. We want to start formulating this charter, which is supposed to span all of the Tensor compiler dialects, laying out what is the intended usage behind them, how do we use them together. And we want to start codifying how you use them together, what these flows are through integration tests. And that's it. These are the 12 people. I think a couple of them will be in this room. do reach out to us. We're hoping that these efforts are all in service of the community. We want to just build this upstream toolkit together to serve all our needs. And that's it. Thank you.